Hello, I'm
Hello.
Ronnie,
I'm Abby.
and this is Dragons in the Details, where we pick apart our favorite fantasy series over the course of an undetermined number of episodes. I don't even know what episode we're on. I think this is 7.
I
Is
think
it
it's
7?
7.
Okay,
I
great.
think it's 7.
Okay, it's 7.
If you're not including bonus episodes, I think we're on 7.
True, and that'll have been out by the time we release this. So that's
Hopefully,
exciting
if we stay
for you
according
guys.
to our plan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
This
yeah.
season, if you haven't been listening, is focused on the Empyrean series by Rebecca Yarros. Quick disclaimer, these episodes contain spoilers for the entire series, up through Onyx Storm. If you have not finished Onyx Storm, you should save this and come back later. Also, due to the contents of this series and who we are as people, this podcast is rated R and should only be listened to by those uncomfortable hearing explicit content. The last couple episodes, we were light on that disclaimer and then we cursed like sailors. And so I think we should just permanently leave it in the end.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, guys. We curse.
We curse. Be careful with your children. Indeed. Yep. All right. Each week we are diving into a specific topic in depth. We've been following that structure. So at this point we can say that's kind of our structure for this podcast. But
Yeah,
for
we're
future
doing
books,
good.
we may change it up. But for the Empyrean series, we've been picking a topic and we've been discussing it in detail. We come with receipts. We have quotes to back up any theories so you can follow along if you're skeptical. But sometimes we think of things on the fly and we just kind of summarize the quote. And if you're super curious, comment on our Instagrams or our TikToks and we will share the exact quote with you. I think we've been pretty good about that so far. This episode will be focused on the Isles and the gods. This is a long awaited one for me. I feel like we've been talking about Isles and gods in every other episode and keep saying like, oh, we're doing an episode on this, so we'll hold back. I'm very excited for this
I'm
one.
really excited about this one. I feel like when I went back and reread the Isles chapters, I, at least for one of them, have a completely different view than I did the first time we went. Really, two of them. But one of them, I am like completely convinced that everything we've been told is basically a lie. I'm very excited about it.
I have guesses as to which one that is for you. But I agree. I felt like heading into this, I was nervous because I felt like I had dropped so many of my most exciting gods theories already in prior episodes with like the dragons and with like who Xaden and Violet parallel. And I was pleased to find that as I went back through the Isles, there's like still more to talk about. So we can recap those if we want to, but I think there is actual new content, which I'm excited for.
I totally agree. And also on that note, at least I personally, I know I'm changing my mind on lots of things all the time. I am going to kind of reserve my right to do that and still feel passionate about what I'm saying at the time. Like, I think, you know, everyone should have an open mind. And as you learn more, you should be willing to change what you've previously said and change your views. So, like, I don't have a specific example, but I'm sure that I have said things before recorded on this podcast that I now might totally contradict. And I apologize if you're keeping score. I'm sorry. I know that must be frustrating, but like, I think that's what's so great about these books. You go back and you learn more and you're like, oh, I was completely wrong, actually. Like, I was totally wrong.
Wait, can you tell the listeners what you said about Leo? Because so that everybody knows here, Abby does first pass on all social clips, and my favorite quote of the weekend was you describing your own zodiac sign. Please share with the class.
Okay, so I'm not really into the zodiac stuff, but it was like, I can't even remember what it was, but there was like a chart on Instagram and it's like, what signs are other signs' favorite signs?
Yeah.
So like, and guys, do not come at me. I am spewing nonsense right now. Like, I don't know anything.
We don't know
right?
things
But it's
about
like,
the zodiac signs.
Aries' favorite sign is Taurus, like Cancer's favorite sign is Pisces, blah, blah, blah. And then it got to Leo. Leo's favorite sign is Leo. They're 100% sure they're correct about all things.
And they're great clips. All of them are great. But Abby clips the most dramatic clips of herself confidently saying these specific theories. And then literally 2 weeks later, she could say something that completely contradicts the last theory that she clipped.
But you've been having great ones. Your social clips take off like way more than mine do. Like you've been having great ones lately. And can I bring up the dragon scale thing or do we want to save that?
No, it's out by now. So bring it up. Yeah.
Okay. So Ronnie had a theory in our dragons episode that the Venom are basically capturing the dragons to make dragon scale armor for the wyvern. And I'm going to be honest, at first I was like a little bit skeptical. I was like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but that sounds pretty far-fetched, right? I was rereading the ending of Onyx Storm for this episode. We're going to do a whole ending of Onyx Storm episode, but I was rereading it. And there is a line in the last chapter of Onyx Storm where basically Xaden says like, they won't they will not remove a single one of her scales. And I literally just texted to Ronnie. I'm like, holy shit, you're 100% right. This is exactly what they're doing. And I love it.
That's the case for both of us. For listeners, we're going to do our next episode is going to be like a response episode to stuff we hear from you.
Yeah.
And like so many of things that we're building on are things that like one or the other of us said like weeks ago. We're like even more excited about it now. So we do get some things right for sure.
I feel like we're building towards a unified theory here. It's just like,
I know.
There's a lot of ping-ponging around.
We were close last time. We were close to something big. We'll get there. Corrections, omissions, and social media shout-outs.
Yeah, all right.
Do you have anything to share with the class?
I do. I'm really excited about this one.
Okay.
Because this is kind of both of our corrections, omissions, social media shout-outs. So basically, to recap, I said that Sgaeyl's last rider died 50 years ago. So Xaden's grandfather died 50 years ago, right? And you said, wait, I thought Sgaeyl was 50 years old, right? You caught me like right on the spot. I went back, I like did a fine tooth comb deep dive here, right? Okay. Here's the evidence we have about Sgaeyl's age. Spoiler alert. The dragons are lying. Like that is my only conclusion here. Like, okay. So here, there's 4 quotes that I've basically pulled. But the first one, and this is the one I was saying about her rider died. So this is in Fourth Wing, chapter 23. Tairn and Sgaeyl haven't been separated for years. Her last rider died almost 50 years ago. I believe this is right after threshing when Dane is talking to Violet and he's like, oh shit, did you know that you just bonded Sgaeyl's mate, Xaden's dragon's mate? So Tairn and Sgaeyl haven't been separated for years. Her last rider died almost 50 years ago. Okay. In Fourth Wing chapter 8, when we are learning about Tairn from Kaori for the first time in that dragon class, Kaori said this one is a little over 100, which makes him about middle-aged. So now we know Tairn is a little over 100, right? Okay. So Sgaeyl's last rider died.
Information from a human, from a professor.
That's information from a professor. Tairn is a little over 100. Sgaeyl's last rider died 50 years ago. In the Xaden POV bonus chapters, which let's be honest, we've all read. If you haven't read them, go read them. They're fucking great. In the Xaden POV chapters, Sgaeyl is teasing Xaden for having a crush on Violet when Violet is like 3 years younger than him. And he says, and you're 50 years younger than Tairn. Your point? So we have 3 pieces of age here, right? We have Tairn is a little over 100. Sgaeyl's last rider died 50 years ago. Sgaeyl is 50 years younger than Tairn. So, okay, maybe there's a scenario here where Sgaeyl was like 3 years old when she bonded. Mm-hmm. However, we have another piece of evidence here. We know that Atrum, Riddick's dragon, Atrum, is on the younger side, right? We can tell by the way Tairn talks to him, like basically the way they're joking with each other. Atrum, we find out at the beginning of Onyx Storm, is 22 years old. So this math does not add up because it seems to me a dragon needs to be at least 20 to bond, right? So someone somewhere is lying about their age. I think almost certainly Tairn and Sgaeyl are both lying about their ages.
Well, I don't know, right? Like if Tairn is lying about his age and Xaden knows that Sgaeyl is 50 years younger than Tairn, Sgaeyl's not lying, maybe. Right? Like Tairn could feasibly just be much older and Sgaeyl is also much older and that math would work. But whatever math we're currently being served does not.
Right. I don't think Xaden's necessarily lying, but Sgaeyl's not 50. She's way older than 50.
Yeah. And I think, we see Andarna go into the dreamless sleep when she's like, what, 2-ish? I think she's supposed to be 2.
And they said it was early.
And forced, right, by the fact that she used so much magic. And honestly, when I was reading back through this, because we had the same, for those who haven't watched the clip, go watch the episode. It's funny, right? You say something and then I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't add up. Okay.
Hold the phone.
Yeah. The thing that I thought of immediately is like, who is Sgaeyl's elder? Like, because I feel like I anchor a bit in elders for like who's in charge of who's the oldest. We know that Kodag is the black elder in the Navarian Empyrean. And we know that Andarna could bond because she had no elder. That was it. Right. So the question is, for me, who is Sgaeyl's elder? How old is
we
Sgaeyl
don't
actually?
Know. The only elder we know is, So anyway, you heard it here first. Probably not first. I'm sure other people have figured this out. But Sgaeyl is not 50.
I have one minor omission for this episode, and it's related to something that you brought up, I think it was in the Xaden episode, about Xaden potentially blackmailing his way back into his title. And the exact phrase, I think, was, "You are the son of a traitor who blackmailed his way back into a title." And when I was rereading the Isles, actually, I came across a quote from Halden that said, "Obviously you're a fucking duke. Llewellyn made sure of it, didn't he? The second most powerful title in the goddamn kingdom goes to a Ryerson of all bloodlines." This, to me, corroborates Xaden's story of how he got his title back and does make Fen likely the traitor. And so I think maybe it's in a history episode. We should dig deeper into why Fen is the blackmailer. Like, how did Fen get the title? Because I think it's becoming more interesting. And it could totally still be Xaden. But to me, like, that quote from Halden, because it was from the same source, I'm like, maybe actually Xaden's story holds true. Llewellyn made sure that Xaden got his title back, and the blackmailing was done by Xaden's father.
No, I mean, Fen could absolutely be the blackmailer. I think it's so interesting. But this is why I love this, right? Because the only reason you and I would be thinking that Fen is the blackmailer was because we did the deep dive on Xaden's family tree, right? So it's like you have to put all of these pieces together to maybe get at the truth, or maybe it's nothing. Who knows?
Yeah. I think, realistically speaking, 60% of the stuff we talk about is probably nothing. And then I have one social media shout out just because the comment was literally this morning, and it's probably my favorite comment I've ever received on a social media video. So this was on our clip about Venin beyond initiates having to feed on power to survive. Charlene commented, "When Xaden," this is just a funny. "When Xaden channeled from Vi's conduit alloy, which was imbued with power, he was able to abstain from channeling for 70 plus days afterwards. I think Violet's pure power might be Narcan for Venin."
Man, but that is a great point.
It's interesting, but also Narcan for Venin made me giggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, literally a piece of the conduit this big made Jack able to survive for a week. Something's up with Violet's power.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, if she's not pulling from a source that has a finite limit, then.
Okay, Isles talk. Abby, talk to us about the Isles.
All right. Deep dive on the Isles. You guys all ready? I assume you guys all know what the Isles are, but in case you don't, quick recap. The Isles do not exist on the map, and I have thoughts about that. But there are not as many Isles as I thought. There are not 7 Isles. There are only 5 Isles, and then there's the minor Isles. You have your correction face on. Am I wrong?
5 large and 13 small.
5 large and 13 small. And 4 of them are dedicated to gods. One of them is Deverelli. So we got to Deverelli and 3 of the God Islands in Onyx Storm. Real quick, because we've talked about this on the pod before. I've gotten social media comments about this before. The Isles are not on the maps, right? So there is this question, why aren't the Isles on the maps? Where are the Isles? And there is a quote that we have talked about at great length about why the Isles might not be on the maps. Just to recap, when Violet goes to Orisha, and she's in like kind of the battle brief version in Orisha in the palace, there's a big map up. The quote about this map: "Unlike the map at Basgaia, this one is the height and width of the large stage where the curtain would hang, and it includes the Isles, the 5 large and 13 smaller islands that surround the continent in every direction." Every direction. Every direction. Okay, fine. Maybe that's one throwaway line. However, there are other lines that also support that the Isles surround the continent in every direction. So our boy Sawyer is from Lucerys. Lucerys is in the northwest corner of the map, bordering the Emerald Sea. Why is this important? We have a quote from Sawyer. "Living in Lucerys, I promise you the only news we got along the coast came from what the scribes put out as official announcements. It's easy as Markham choosing which news gets published and which doesn't. We aren't even open to trading vessels from the Isle Kingdoms." So the Isle Kingdoms are close enough to Lucerys that they could trade via ship, right? Again, in the northwest corner of Navarre, bordering the Emerald Sea. Why does this matter? Quotes about the Emerald Sea. "I cannot imagine life beyond the Emerald Sea. No ship has ever survived the tempests that form its ice-tipped waves, and the only sailors who return from her exploration do so defeated." Emerald Sea, pretty much uncrossable, right?
Yeah.
The point of all of this is, to get to the Isles, you do have to cross the Emerald Sea, and the Emerald Sea is basically uncrossable by boat. We know that Asher has been to all of the Isles. How did he get there? The question remains, how did he get there?
Yeah.
I think he had to have flown.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a dragon. I don't know if it was a griffin. I don't know if it was basket style like Halden, but Yeah. And the only reason to not put these isles on the map at this point, in my mind, is to not show them being across the Emerald Sea with that epigraph. Like, at this point, it's sketchier that they're not on the map. She's really just drawing more attention to it.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I have this problem where I get frustrated with Violet for not talking about certain things in these books or thinking about them. And one of them is like, I think the last trading between any of the continent and the Isles happened like 3 years ago or something like that. Like, we're not talking enough about how Asher got to the Isles in general and like who was he allied with and how did he not have ties to Paromial in some regard or Tyrandor in some regard to actually get to the Isles to begin with. And then, of course, like if he does have ties with Paromial, then you can start assuming, okay, Griffin's probably not realistic given the Emerald Sea is so treacherous and we know they struggle to even just get to the warm weather Isles.
Yeah.
But there's so many questions about how Asher got there. And
right?
yeah.
Because his rank changes every time he writes a new book. Which, I mean, I guess he could have gone once, collected all this data, written the books over a longer period of time. But also, I know we threw this out a couple of weeks ago. I think when we were talking about the irids, but like going back over this, Violet asked so many times, how did he have the time to do this? How did he have the time to do this? We know Andarna can slow down time. I'm like kind of more convinced than ever that irids can change time somehow. Like, and that Asher was working with them. Like she brings it up so much. Like I really think we are supposed to think about it because it's totally fair, right? Like he is a scribe. At a certain point in this, he's working at Basgaeth. Obviously, he has Lilith. He might even have kids at the point that he's writing some of these. Like, how do they not notice he's just gone for months? You know?
Yeah. And the kids were born, frankly, pretty far apart. Like Brennan to Violet is definitely more than 6 years because Mira to Violet is like 6.
Yeah. Brennan's
Interesting.
And Lilith's not going to stay home and raise the kids.
She sure did not. No. They seem to just have a culture there where the kids are touted to wherever you need to go, though. So.
Right, but this is also a good point because we know from like the little quips that Dane and Violet had with each other that they were also moving around, right? They were moving around all the time in her childhood. So like, yeah, when did he have time to go off and explore the Isles?
Big mystery of Asher.
Asher remains probably a secret writer, perhaps able to manipulate time.
Perhaps. Or at least allied with someone who potentially could.
Yeah.
Slightly more realistic. Okay.
Yeah, and now I'm thinking about your theory that irids were secretly on the continent the whole time.
I think that still has legs.
Yeah, like, doesn't that make sense? Like, Asher finds and befriends an irid. The irid's like, I'm going to show you what the fuck is really going on here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if I'm an irid, right, as soon as I catch wind of somebody with the means
and he's studying them, right? Yeah.
To help figure out how to get the venom to go bye-bye, like, I'm going to talk to them.
Right, and the irids can talk to anyone. You don't have to bond.
Yeah, and there's no reason to believe, in my opinion, that Asher would have bonded them because they seem perfectly happy to interface with humans and even support humans without bonding them. So,
right. Well, we solved it. Solved.
Okay. Solved. Done.
So in conclusion, our theory is Asher finds secret irids hiding on the continent. I'd say that's not impossible.
No, I think we were led to it with that throwaway line from Xaden. Like, do you think Aden's been hiding in front of the Empyrean this entire time? Yes, actually, I do.
So Asher finds a secret hidden irid den on the continent. They talk to him. He tells them what's going on. They say, okay, it is imperative that you learn as much as you can about the gods and the Isle kingdoms. We're going to take you there. Get on our backs. You're going to fly. Because every Sorrengail is a rider, don't you know?
Mm-hmm.
He learns everything he can, and they manipulate time while they're doing this so that he can learn as much as possible, but that no one realizes he's gone. He comes back, he writes these books over a period of time to leave for Violet. That's the theory.
Is there a balance where if you take time, then you lose it? We died. I'll come back to this.
We didn't even warm up this episode. We just don't write it.
We haven't even started talking about the Isles yet.
Damn. Okay. Maybe.
Yeah. When we were thinking about Asher potentially engaging in some time manipulation activities aided by the irids to do all of his research, he just drops dead of a heart attack far younger than you would expect somebody to drop dead of a heart attack. Did he take a bunch of time from some other plane of existence, right, where he was off doing whatever he needed to do, and he had to give that time back in our current plane of existence?
I mean, nature likes everything in balance. We're almost bordering on sci-fi here, but I think it's Rebecca literally said at one point, imagine anything that could happen in a fantasy world. Like, that's the limit here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, starting off so strong here. Okay. Anyway, that was fun.
That was fun. Anything else general that you wanted to talk about related to the Isles before we talk about each? I have something fun that kind of helped me frame the episode that's not specific to any one Isle, but it's been helpful in how I think of each of them. As we step through these, I feel like it's going to become apparent. The Isles each have this like fatal flaw due to the fact that they each worship one god and over-index on one facet of like all the pillars that the gods represent. And I think this is called to our attention in chapter 30's epigraph in On the Storm. It says, it is unwise to favor one god above another, better to shun them all than show favoritism amongst a jealous, prodigious pantheon, which is such a fun quote, first of all. But I also think it's interesting, right? Because all of these Isles worship one god, and they all have kind of fallen out of grace in some regard. Like they're trying to get power. They're propositioning Queen Mariah and Peromial. Like they're trying to come back, but they're all worshiping one god rather than all of them.
So this is I think it's so fun. It's like we get so little about the gods, and I had forgotten that epigraph, right? But to call them jealous and prodigious at the same time.
Yeah, they don't get along, it seems.
Yeah, there's so much insight in that.
I mean, we've hypothesized before that we don't know all the gods.
Well, we've hypothesized that there's a secret seventh one.
Yeah.
So
I feel like as we talk through these, like you get to understand in each, you're like, you might not be living the way that gods would want you to live because you're just following.
Looking at you, Hedotis.
I know you're about to come for Hedotis. You are. And I do think it's also interesting that the Isle Kingdoms have, like, there's a quote, having refused every proposal from the Isle Kingdoms, Queen Mariah has named her distant cousin Viscount Takaris of Corden as her heir. As the Viscount is living in his 5th decade and has no direct heirs of his own, the decision has not been a popular one. I just think it's so interesting to think about the fact that these Isle Kingdoms are trying to ally, which is not new information to us, right? Like, that's what Talia did.
Interesting point.
They're trying to ally with Peromial. They're trying to get back in somehow, it seems.
But they won't ally with
Navarre. Well, some of them do.
Yeah, Helena
is happy to. Yes. Okay. Anything else general?
No, I feel like we've already touched on so many interesting things that we haven't even gotten into. We haven't even started talking about the gifts. Holy shit.
Okay. I know the gifts are going to take us to big places. Let's start. So we're starting with Dune. We've already talked a ton about Dune and Unnbriel in general. And I'm going to apologize in advance. Most of the content that I've amassed on this is related to Unnbriel, and Dune is kind of secondary. But Unnbriel, we talked about this a fair amount in our Dragons episode. Abby had some really interesting theories about Tairn having been to Unnbriel before. When I went back and read through this chapter, I was like, this city is built for dragons.
Absolutely.
Like, there's no other way around it. So just to recap, context is important, right? Unnbriel is the Isle dedicated to Dune. They have cream-colored beaches, they've got white-capped teal waves, and their port city is called Sonorum. There is another town 2 to 3 miles from Sonorum, and then nothing for 40. So we know that this is a big-ass island, okay? And Ystol, I think that's how you pronounce it, is the capital, and it's described as only a 20-minute flight, but the cavalry takes 2 hours to get there. And they're armed with crossbolts. Like, there were dragons here. And they affirm that in a way by saying we haven't seen dragons here for centuries.
Yeah.
So we know that there have been dragons. We know that the vegetation there is muted green, the same as Deverelli's. Pigment has been sucked out. The magic there is non-existent. The vegetation is not weak, but just not vibrant.
Yeah.
And it's a hot and humid Isle.
It's like a sepia filter on everything.
Sepia filter. And we know that they wear their temple attendants wear blue robes. I thought that was interesting because I'm also thinking about the dragons that align with these. And then I think there's a few interesting things that we haven't yet dove into. And I want to start by building off of your point from the last episode. And then there's a bunch of stuff that's totally unrelated. So you have brought up, right, that Tairn is weird on Unnbriel. He's like can you stop thinking too hard to Violet,
Right.
which he never says, right? He is
No.
always telling Violet to dig deeper, go deeper. And you brought up that there are many times where he's like, just stop, like pay attention, don't think about this right now. I wanted to go figure out what exactly he was telling her to stop analyzing when he was analyzing it. And so the first time we hear it, it's recognizing the claw and the emblem and drawing a relation to dragons. She says it's similar to ours. I tell Tairn as we cross under the thick gate, they have a claw in her symbol, suggesting a common origin. He says, focus now, analyze later. We're analyzing right now. Then, when she starts recognizing that their hair is like hers, she says, her hair looks like mine. And he says, survive first so you can be curious later. Focus. And then the last time is when she was thinking about the emblem of Dune tattoo on the priestess's forehead and started to think about its connection to theophany. So she said she must be at least 75 years old. How long would it take for such a tattoo to fade to the point it's unrecognizable? My stomach lurches into my throat. There's no way. And then she's cut off. Tairn says, focus. And theophany's description, as we know later, is the scarlet veins beside her eyes remind me of a masquerade mask topped by the faded tattoo on her forehead, and the red glow around her irises is 10 shades brighter than Jack's. A sage, probably even a maven. And were it not for the physical signs of her lost soul, she'd be stunningly beautiful with high cheekbones and a full mouth, but her skin is eerily pale. So she looks young, but the tattoo on her forehead is faded, and the way I interpret it is Violet is like, shit, how old is Theophany if the faded tattoo on her forehead is faded? And so I think based on these three things, we can infer that Tairn is terrified that Violet is going to deduce a connection between dragons, Unnbriel, and theophany. And we found out the theophany and Unnbriel part, but we didn't really find out about the dragons and Unnbriel and theophany part, and I have a suspicion that Tairn himself is where dragons fit in. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still 100% convinced Tairn has been to Unnbriel, or... Okay, I have a couple more things to kind of back that up, and then I have more thoughts on Unnbriel in general. But yeah, so the queen says this isle hasn't seen fire breathers in centuries, right? That's what she said. It's not, this isle has never seen fire breathers. This isle hasn't seen fire breathers in centuries. We just talked at the top of the episode about how Tairn is fucking lying about how old he is. So I think it's completely reasonable that Tairn has been here, right? Maybe 200, 300 years ago. I'm like kind of more...
Read, right? 200, 300 years ago, how old do we think Theophany is, realistically?
Somewhere in there. I don't know. Yeah. So the other thing I noticed, there's 3 different types of soldiers described in Unnbriel.
With different colored uniforms.
Different colors and different symbols on their uniforms. So the first one, the soldiers that they first see when they like set the trap from them, those soldiers wear green pale leathers. Their emblem is 2 cross swords over a horseshoe, right? And they ride horses. Then they get into the city. There's 2 different types of soldiers described here. One of them is pale blue uniforms with metal greaves. We don't get much information about them. The second ones are wearing silver uniforms with armored chest plates. These seem to guard the temple. It seems like the green soldiers just kind of guard the island, but the silver soldiers guard the temple. Their emblem is 2 swords gripped in the center by a claw, right? So it's not only, like, Rebecca specifically put this in here, right? And in my mind, that is analogous to, okay, we have our infantry division and we have our rider division, right? So it's not like everyone has a claw. It is specifically these soldiers that are tied to Dune, that are meant to protect the temple, that have the claw in their origin. Absolutely 100% dragons have been here. And they are specifically tied to Dune, not just Unnbriel. They are here to protect the Temple of Dune.
Yeah.
Or they're protecting the Temple of Dune from the dragons. We don't know.
Well,
right?
It's almost like a mini, like, Sgaeyth type structure, right? Because we have infantry.
Exactly. Exactly.
And we also have riders. And so maybe their highest military rank was riders.
And Asher has that quote, right? That's like, I don't have it. Maybe you remember it.
Yeah, here we go. I've got it. There are times I look at Parapet at the very act of threshing and marvel that dragons have not been to Unnbriel. What we call treacherous is their idea of primary school. Unnbriel, the Isle of Dune, by 2nd Lieutenant Asher Daxton.
Wow. So that's such an interesting idea, right? Like maybe the dragons have been to Unnbriel, see that the way that Unnbriel treats their soldiers, right? And then it's like, all right, we're bringing this back to Navarre and we're going to build a war college that does exactly the same thing because we need soldiers that fight like Dune. I don't know.
It's interesting too. It's just interesting that Asher would even write that because I feel like one look at Dune and even the things that he documented about Dune, you would deduce that dragons have been to Unnbriel.
Yeah, but maybe he can't say it, right?
Yeah.
So he's
Yeah.
like leading the horse to water.
Yeah.
And Violet should really read more closely.
Violet needs to be asking more questions.
Violet needs a podcast.
And Tairn needs to stop cutting her thought process off. God damn it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Agree. Can we talk about Violet defeating Marley's for a
Happy
second?
to. Yeah.
Because that was another thing that was important, right? So maybe we should actually start with just the battle in general and the fact that the three of them were selected. So we know, like it's pointed out multiple times, the law in Unnbriel is one fight, not three.
Right.
Why were there three? There has to be a specific reason that their queen specified three. And I actually wanted to bring this up because I was curious whether you had
was
any
it the
ideas.
queen?
So
That'd be my first question.
yeah, I don't know, but I wanted to talk about the part. Do you remember the part where the soldier goes and tells, I think it was the priestess, I don't actually remember, I'll find it. The soldier goes and tells them that they want an audience and that they're willing to fight for it, and he gets cut down and demoted. Do we know why?
No, I don't think that
no
made
idea
any
why.
sense. Yeah.
There's got to be a reason.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. All right. We don't know. But we know that the law is one fight, not three. They seem to have planned for three from the start because three walk in. Dane, Xaden, and Violet are not yet selected, but three walk in. So we know that they had planned on three for some reason. And we talked in the Violet episode about Dane and Xaden being two of Violet's paths. I don't know whether we can interpret this battle as a deciding factor, but Violet and Xaden winning, if you do interpret it that way, is a pretty clear answer that Xaden is her path. But you've said this, right? It's important to note that she is the reason they won.
Right.
Like if she had not been able to free Xaden from the hold, if she hadn't put a dagger in his shoulder, Xaden would have lost. And then they would have lost the 2 out of 3 that became the new rule for them. Okay. And then we also have Violet defeating Marlies. And so in chapter 30, Xaden summarizes the challenging law by saying, no, but defeating your best in combat earns us entrance to the court at the defeated opponent's rank.
Right. So Violet is the queen of Unnbriel. Thank you.
A lot of people think that this means that Violet is a candidate for being queen of Unnbriel. I actually don't think that. I think what that means is Violet gets to enter their court at queen rank, not become a member of their court at queen rank. And I think that supports your precog theory that Violet will become queen of something big.
We're definitely going towards Tyrandor.
We're definitely going towards Tyrandor, but is it bigger than Tyrandor? Yeah.
Is she queen of everything at the end of this?
Yeah. But I think that's what that means, is she's on par with Marlies in terms of how she interfaces with their court.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, I don't know what enter court means, right? Like, does it mean become a member of court, or does it literally just mean this is the level of person that you can talk to, basically? Yeah. Obviously, she talks to the queen, but so does Xaden.
Yes, but at the end, when she says, okay, Eric, like, go talk to Marlies, Marlies says, I only speak with people who have defeated.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, like, to her, Eric's rank was not recognized. He was like, you didn't best me.
Yeah, I think we are setting ourselves towards an Unnbriel Violet alliance, which will probably be important in the upcoming Tyrrish rebellion. Anyway.
Yeah. I'm somewhat irritated that her hair wasn't more of a topic of conversation when they were in Unnbriel. How could you not see yourself as an ally?
I don't know. Okay. I had a couple more things on Unnbriel, but I don't want to.
Go for it. I have like little onesie-twosie things that are less
All right.
fun.
I don't know if you noticed this, and I certainly have not combed all these books to see if this is the only time that this happens, but the voice in Violet's head is back. So I am pretty convinced it's Dune. Like, I'm pretty convinced it's Dune. Oh, I see on your face you're not convinced it's Dune.
Well, at one point, the italic voice in her head, after she had cracked the steps or seats or whatever she cracked with lightning, says
or Dune. Yeah, I know.
Would Dune talk about herself in the third person?
I think so. So these
that for me was a ding against the Dune theory.
So when the captain finds her and he says, you're not worthy to have an audience with your queen. It was so easy for us to find you. She says, we made it easy, Captain. I cock my head to the side and flip my dagger to pinch its tip as Tairn growls at my back, low and mean. Then italicized, just the way I like him. That, to me, points to Dune, right? Because I think that Tairn has been to Unnbriel before. I think that Tairn has a connection to Dune. Whoever is speaking in Violet's head right now is speaking like they have an intimate connection with Tairn. Sure, could be Violet. I think it's so much more fun if it's not. I think it's so much more fun if it's Dune. And then this quote that you're saying right here, Marla says, was that you? She said, and Violet goes, no, I shake my head. I mean, the heat, the anger, the snap, weird, just coincidence. Or Dune. There isn't any magic here, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was just Rebecca having fun and being like, yeah, this is Dune. right? Like Dune is in Violet's head. I have seen, and I've had people come at me with some being like, oh no, this is Andarna, and Darna has bonded with Violet before any of this started. Like the voice in Violet's head is always Andarna. No, because Violet can talk to Andarna here, and when Violet talks to Andarna, it's in quotes. These are not in quotes. This is just italic.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the voice is anywhere else. I think this voice only comes back on Unnbriel. Like I said, I have not reread all 3 books to see. But
yeah, the voice is a topic in our mailbag episode, and so I'll definitely talk about it more there. I don't know.
All right, well, I'm very excited for mailbag.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more.
Okay.
But I did notice that, and I'm so glad that you did too.
I'm on the lookout for this voice now. I could be completely wrong. Could be nothing. Could just be the little voice in everyone's head. But
people don't think it's nothing.
Great. Fun stuff. Okay, so this I thought was very fun. And this is not Unnbriel. This is just general Dune stuff, which is fun too. The last thing I wanted to talk about was Theophany's death, right? And this gets back to your power of the gods theory and the power of the gods being like a huge player in this. When Violet stabs Theophany with the stone made from the temple in Unnbriel. So 2 things happen. Sorry, I'm going to take us back for a second. So Theophany says to Violet, when Violet figures out that Theophany was a priestess in Unnbriel, she says, do you know the pain of never being allowed to return, of knowing that it would sever the very thing that's kept me untouchable all these years? This is like your favorite quote. You tell me about this quote all the time, right?
Love it.
Sever the very thing that's kept me untouchable all these years, right? When Violet stabs Theophany, she bleeds, right? And Theophany is like surprised. So the quote is, so Violet stabs Theophany, then she sees blood and stops. How? Her eyes flare and she topples to her knees. Stone doesn't kill Venin. You are never just Venin, I reply. Dune is a wrathful goddess to high priestesses who turn their backs on her. So she bleeds and she's surprised, right? She says, how? Like, this doesn't make sense. I shouldn't be dying. So go back to the beginning of Onyx Storm when Violet is interrogating Jack about Venin. Jack says, why don't you ask me the questions you really want to know? Ask me when I turned, how I turned. Ask me why only initiates bleed. Right? So sages and mavens aren't supposed to bleed. So Theophany, when she died, I don't think she was Venin anymore. I think basically what happened is Dune severed her being Venin. Dune is like, you are not Venin anymore. And because she was so old and because she had been stabbed, she desiccated. But it's not the same as when you stab them with an alloy hilted dagger where the alloy kills them. Like she was unmade, basically. Which is obviously huge for Xaden, right? Like this is a huge, implications of this are huge. But I think you're right about the power of the gods. I think the power of the gods has the ability to unmake the Venin. I think it's going to be a huge part.
Yeah. I mean, that line was just that line to me was Rebecca handing us basically the closest thing possible to the answer, but we have like 11 different paths that we could have gotten there based on everything we've been told about dedication and the fact that Violet and Xaden got married in the Temple of Dune and the fact that she bled. Like, yes, I think 100% the power of the gods is the answer, just like in what format? Like, do we have to stab Xaden with a fucking temple dagger? Do we have to do that?
Well, right.
Yeah. So
no, I think you're right. I think it's the power of the gods. I think that's the answer here. What that looks like, how that happens, I don't know.
Yeah. But I think that Rebecca did that intentionally. I'm here for that sort of thing. Like if we get like a carrot of this is gonna work, I can chase that carrot. That's fine.
This is our carrot. This is our carrot.
Yeah.
It's here. Yeah. Of course, the flip side of this, which I was looking at for Malek a bit later, is that when Varys dies, he also bleeds. But I'm not convinced that Varys was like a sage or a maven, if I'm being honest, but we'll get there. It's fine.
We also weren't, Varys wasn't a confirmed Venin. Like
no,
you
not
and I
confirmed
both
Venin. Just
very much
speculated
believe
Venin.
that he is, but he's not been, confirmed.
But yeah, I mean, sages and mavens don't bleed. Like that's for sure here. Like they don't, like that's what Jack said. Ask why only initiates bleed.
Yep. Agree.
And Theophany was bleeding. So not a Venin anymore, bitch.
Yeah. I'm just like, how do we do that without them desiccating afterwards? Is what we need to figure out.
Well, right. But that's what I'm saying. Like, Theophany has been set up to be centuries old, right? So that's what kills her. Old age and probably being stabbed. But
But what happens if a Venin walks into the Temple of Dune? That's what the next experiment that we need to test.
Well, did Xaden walk into the Temple of
Correct.
Dune?
I can't. He did. They got married there. Where is he now? What's going on? What does he look like? What power does he have? He's in the Isles.
Is he still hot? Maybe. Maybe not.
Maybe.
Maybe not. We'll find out. All right. That's all
I
I
mean, if
have
he's
on
in the
Dune.
Isles and he's still venom, he's in trouble, right? Because there's nothing there for him to feed on. So there's that. Okay, other things on Dune, just to wrap it up, because we are, in fact, an hour in.
That seems impossible given how much we have left to talk
And
about.
we have so much left to cover. Things that I just feel the need to point out but don't have great answers for. The pupils being dilated. We saw multiple mentions of Violet saying, like, what drugs are involved in this temple. The High Priestess's pupils are dilated when they speak. I think the drugs is just first of all, it's interesting, right, that we live in a world where there's only been 2 drugs that we've ever been faced with, and Violet is immediately assuming that dilated pupils are drugs. I wonder whether the pupil dilation is connected to the ability of oracles. That's like my only hypothesis so far, is that's related to how they see. And we
know nothing.
We think that dedicating yourself to Dune affords you some power. And so we've not seen this wielded in any format, in any way. The only thing we have is that the High Priestess's pupils are dilated. So what's going on there? Is it mind work? I don't know. I also think it's noteworthy that Marlies does not yield until Violet wields. So it's clear that Violet wielding meant something to her. A message from Dune, and she says, you cracked something that stood for, or you destroyed something that stood for 700 years before your arrival. So whatever was there was pre-unification. Everything that was built there was pre-unification.
Exactly. So this is interesting too, because they mention in Devarelli that the palace has stood for 1,000 years too. Yeah.
And guess what island doesn't have things from pre-unification anymore?
Hedotis. Did I get it right?
You did, yeah. And then the only other thing, this is not specific to Unnbriel, but I think it's interesting and confusing to me is the reason that I noted it. Violet notes that she can't shield, which confused me because she has enough magic to communicate with her dragons, but not to shield from them. Why?
And I remember being confused who said it. I was not clear if it was Violet or Tairn or Andarna.
It was Violet saying, please control your emotions, Andarna, I can't shield here.
Don't you think that's an incredibly bitchy thing for Violet to say? I thought that was so out of character. I could see Tairn saying it.
She said, be careful with your emotions. I don't know. It's kind of rude, but it's also kind of fair. Like, she needed to get shit done, and Andarna was flooding her with fury, which was difficult. Yeah. But I think the important question is, like, are those 2 abilities from different sources? Like, shielding and wielding. To have ground magic to shield, and she has something else. Like, why can you not shield when you can speak with your dragons?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I don't know. That is a good question.
Dunno.
Or is it an oopsie?
It could be an oopsie. It could always, like, I feel like we should just actually add this to our blanket disclaimers. These all could be oopsies.
Oh, but there's so much here.
Who's to say? So that semi-wraps Unnbriel. I feel like we have 17 different things to follow up on, but
I think it's just so funny because definitely the first time I read these books, I was like, why are we going on this fucking journey to the Isles? Get me back to the mainland. This doesn't matter at all. And now I'm like, you fool. This matters so much.
I think I stand by my initial reaction, which is the Isles should have been their own book. We needed a full book. Anyways, tell us about Hedotis.
All right. So I'm going to start with the fun stuff. And you're going to immediately disagree with me. I know that you are.
Okay.
I think it is possible that we all owe Talia a huge apology.
Okay, tell me why.
All right. Again, we're starting with Hedotis, and then I think we'll go into the Hedon. So when we get to Hedotis, the person that we meet immediately is named Ferris. He is a member of the Triumvirate, which is a democratically elected wisdom council, as far as I can tell, that rules the island. We get a couple of interesting things about his description, like his physical appearance. The first thing that popped out to me on my reread, the intricate metallic embroidery of his tunic speaks to money, as does the sparkling red gem at the top of his cane. Okay. We haven't talked about this on the pod at all, but I have seen crazy theories on Instagram about this. One of the books that Violet reads about the Venin is called Red Regalia, right? So there is a theory going around that basically when Rebecca says someone is wearing a lot of red, that is a clue that they are a secret Venin. This is why people think the Duchess of Moraine is a secret Venin, because she is decked out in rubies. That is like her constant description, that she is decked out in rubies, and she does some sketchy shit. Theophany's sword is also ruby hilted, so that is a clue that the Venin go for red gemstones. Duchess of Moraine has a giant ruby necklace and big ruby earrings.
And also, Kat's gift is a ruby.
I know.
That hurts.
I know.
Okay. All right.
I know.
All right, we'll come back to that.
I know. All right. So that on its own might not necessarily be enough to convince me that Ferris is Venom, right? Whatever. He's just fond of a red ruby. However, the next thing we find out about him is that his eyes are purple, not naturally purple, purple because they ingest a mineral that they believe makes them smarter. Notably, Talia, who's also from Hedotis, has brown eyes. She does not have purple eyes. Her eyes are brown. Okay, so we have a red ruby. We have eyes that are no longer naturally colored because of this mineral. We also know when they get to Hedotis, somehow it is paler than Unnbriel. And Tairn even makes a comment here, like, there must be less magic here than in Unnbriel. I don't know how it's possible to have less than nothing, though, right? So that's kind of a question we don't have an answer to. So we're walking along the path that there have been Venom here. There might be Venom here right now. Here are other sketchy things that Ferris does. In the dinner scene where everyone has been poisoned, Talia, we find out that Violet has poisoned the triumvirate before they poisoned Garrick and everyone, right? Ferris finds out that Talia is dying, does not give two shits. Literally doesn't give two shits. Violet says about this, Ferris isn't
poisons her son. Like, he clearly does not give a shit about Talia.
Ferris isn't responding to a threat to his own life or even his wife's. It goes against every base instinct I have. I would have forked over the antidote as soon as I'd realized Aiden was in trouble, right? So he doesn't care about his wife. He immediately asks if killing the riders would kill their dragons, right? And he has planned to kill all the riders during dinner, right? So he's clearly interested in killing the dragons. And he talks about the foolhardiness of dragons, right? So Ferris says, to tie your life to another's, especially something as frail and easily breakable as a human, seems a foolhardy thing to do, right? So we have
he comments particularly on the griffins who die when their humans die.
Right. So we have kind of a anti-dragon, anti-griffin sentiment. But some very Venom-like tendencies. What Ferris wants above everything else, right, is knowledge. That's what he craves. That's what he wants. He wants to be seen as the smartest person in the room, no matter what, right? Theophany promises Violet, if she turns, knowledge, right? So what she says to Violet is, I'll let you keep both your dragons while giving what you want most in this world. Control and knowledge. Ferris has this incessant need to be right. Ferris doesn't care about the people around him. His eyes have been dyed purple. He's got a red gem.
Interesting.
I think he's Venom. I think he's secretly Venom. I think, and so I know you're saying to yourself, what is he draining, right? How could he survive on an island with no magic if he's Venom? Violet tells us the answer. Because Violet says, what do you think will happen when the Venom come for you? He says, we're safe. We have no magic here. Violet says, foolish, foolish man. I shake my head. They'll drain you. Right? So is Ferris going around draining people because he thinks at some point a Venom promised him knowledge beyond his wildest dreams? Because we also know that Hedon, there are quotes that Hedon does not answer the prayers of the people who pray to him. Right? And they start dinner with a prayer to Hedon, right? So if what Ferris wants is knowledge above everything else, and Hedon is not giving it to him, is he going to turn to another source to get this knowledge?
All right. I think also what's interesting about that theory as well is one of my notes is, I think 150 years ago, something really bad happened in Hedotis. 150 years ago, the triumvirate razed the city, cut down all of the buildings because they were, quote, not efficient enough. And by the way, Hedon, the name of the god, means the one who cuts down. So I think that's interesting.
Well, I didn't even
rebuilt it with what they called intention. And this is why everything there is like so uniform and drab.
And Violet's quote about that was, you destroyed the historical base of the city, homes your citizens have lived in for generations. Yes, it's beautiful and efficient, but it also shows your intolerance for things that are not. Right. So all of this is pointing me towards Ferris. Perhaps the whole triumvirate, we don't really know, but certainly Ferris, I think, is Venom, is at least working with the Venom. However, there is a flip side to this in that he clearly cares about the life of his sons, because that is what ultimately gets him to, well, does he yield? I don't know. But he clearly cares about the life of his sons, right? Like he reacts very poorly when Violet says, well, your sons are going to die. But we still have that quote from that epigraph from one of the chapters in Onyx Storm about
where
the Venom
Venom
woman
left
who leaves her son. So as we've discussed previously, it is possible to be Venom and still love your children, still love your wife. I don't think Ferris gives two fucks about Talia personally, in which case, kind of poor Talia. She's had 2 husbands now who clearly don't give a fuck about her. Here's where I think we owe Talia an apology, even if Ferris is not a Venom, which I think he is. She gives Violet the antidote before dinner, right? She's talking to the cook. The cook has blue on his fingernails. She's from this island. I think she knows exactly what's going on. And she gives Violet the antidote. And she's insistent about it. Remember, she's like pushing the tray through the door.
Yeah.
She's like, you have to take this, right?
But you think Talia knew? Like,
I do.
Talia
I do.
seemed to be in shambles about the entire thing.
Yeah, I know. I think she's a good
So
actress.
you think she's just a fantastic liar?
Yeah. She gives her the antidote before dinner, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think she knew. That's my theory. I think Talia is not the terrible. I mean, obviously, I don't think she's a great mother. But
Do you think she knows what Ferris is? If Ferris is Venom, do you think she knows?
Yeah, probably. Maybe. No, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not. But I think at the very least, she knew Ferris was planning to poison Xaden. And I think she knew how. And I think she was like, I have to save his life. I cannot watch my son die. And so she gives him the antidote before dinner.
I definitely buy that Talia knows that Ferris, like, it doesn't even seem like it's unique to Talia's knowledge. It seems like everybody knows, based on Asher's texts, that the people of Hedotis are very disingenuous and like, it's almost like Hedian's worshippers are more interested in trickery and like loopholes and like deceit than knowledge, thinking that they're smart for
right. It's more that it's not knowledge that they're seeking, it's recognition that they are the smartest people in the room. That they're
like
seeking.
it's like it's victory, or it's like
absolutely
superiority over hunger for knowledge, which is interesting to me.
Right. And the scribes specifically don't pray to Hedian. Like, there's a couple quotes in here. I have them. Your scribes don't pray to Hedian for wisdom. Knowledge and wisdom are 2 different things. Scribes are careful not to ask for what should be earned, right? So, like, the scribes don't pray to Hedian for knowledge, but the people on Hedotis do. And we know Hedian doesn't answer prayers, basically, right? So, like, why would you keep praying to him? Doesn't make a lot of sense. Not very wise, in my opinion. But
yeah, going back to that quote about the pantheon, right, and folks who don't get along, Hedian seems like the problematic one, like the only god that we've come across so far where I genuinely think that there's a nefarious nature about him.
Or none of this is actually Hedotis, or there was a real Hedotis that was peaceful, right?
Yeah.
And it's gone.
Yeah, interesting. I went a totally different way.
That's great. Love it.
But nowhere as insightful. I would argue that the people who worship Hedian would be the most likely, like most susceptible to any bribery by the Venom, because their deity has no moral compass that it's imparting upon them. And this is where it's important that they don't worship any other gods. Like they are basically living under this, we have one goal and it's for our minds to get more knowledge into it. And so I think their moral compass is just absolute utter bullshit, like non-existent. And so I think something really bad happened in Hedotis 150 years ago. I think it could have been an entirely different island. We already talked about that. So what I took away from Ferris's physical description was a question. Do we think silver hair can correlate to more than one god? Ferris, because he has silver hair, red curly hair with 2 strips of silver and such blue eyes that they're actually purple. Strips of silver doesn't make it sound like it's aging. So is there a form of dedication that can occur to Hedian?
Well, I think certainly I think you can be dedicated to any god. This is interesting because Markham is also described as having silver brows and like eyebrows. And Norel in Deverelli is described as having silver either hair or eyebrows, right?
She's old.
Well, this is the question, right? Like sometimes Rebecca uses silver, sometimes she uses gray just to connote that someone's like older.
Yeah.
But I think the Markham thing is interesting, right? The idea that people who are seeking knowledge have this silver to them, the same as people who are seeking war, not seeking war, who are dedicated to Dune.
Dedicated to some god. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I also really want to know what Andarna's doing when she scrapes her talons.
I know.
Like, I don't feel like we have a great answer for it, but she has scraped her talon in the sand
Every
at least
aisle.
2 aisles that I've
Yeah.
noted, and I'm sure it's
She
every
does it
one.
at Hedotis and Sgaeyl.
Yeah, for sure. Those are the 2 that I took down. So for the listeners, Andarna scrapes a talon in the sand twice. The first time is in Hedotis, and it said that she scrapes a talon in the sand and says, "I do not like this place. My kind would not settle here. We should leave." She does the same thing in Sgaeyl, but we don't get as much narrative out of it. And what we're talking about is like, what is she gaining? What is she doing with that talon?
What's the test there?
Yeah.
And I did notice that when the irids show up, they also flex their claws in the sand. Like, that's the first thing that Violet notices, right? Is the claws flexing in the sand. So are they also looking for something? But with Andarna, it's like a single, she's like scraping a single talon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or are they sensing magic or sensing something? And I think one kind of crazy, like this is totally out of left field and not related to the Isles at all, but do you remember when Jack Barlow is in that cell and says that he can hear the echoes or feel the echoes of Violet's pain from when she's being tortured down there by Varish? I'm like, is there some element of the ability to like sense something that's happened somewhere? We've kind of been introduced to it through Venin, but as we know, like irids and Venin are mirrors in a way.
Is it time? Like, is it a time thing? Like,
Yeah, maybe.
again, like you can, I don't know. Or is that Jack's signet? Can Jack like feel pain in spaces?
Maybe. Unanswered question. The only other point that I had that was more related to the fact that it was on Hedotis that they realized it, I think Talia 100,000% reinforces our suspicion that Tyrandor is going to regain the crown. Like, she says, Tyrandor is the largest province of Navarre. Much of its territory lies beyond their wards, so its allegiance to the kingdom has always been weaker than the others. It would not surprise me to find, in the course of this war, Tyrandor regains its sovereignty, which is why a lifetime alliance was secured. So 2 things, right? 1, Talia took a bet that Tyrandor would become its own kingdom when she entered that contract marriage. That's another situation in which the Isle kingdoms are vying for some sort of alliance with not Navarre necessarily. Like, she's taken a bet that it's not going to be part of Navarre. And then it also potentially means that an alliance between Tyrandor and Hedotis did exist, and I hypothesize that that's how Asher gained passage. I think that Asher knew Fen. I think they had to know each other.
I love that idea. I mean, I don't know anything about Fen, but in general, I love that idea.
I like to think that Fen is a good dude.
I don't know. Did he blackmail his way into power?
Well, as we've discussed, Machiavellian figures exist in these books. It's interesting, too, because I noted that the citizens of Hedotis wear these muted green robes.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that they have such an affiliation towards rubies. I didn't pick that up.
At least Ferris does.
Yeah.
Right, and those robes are described as being like the scribes. So is Basgaeth in fact just a amalgamation
which is a word that
is used in these books?
And I want to talk about it when we talk about Amari. Yeah. So, okay.
All right. I think we must continue.
I forget what's next.
I have Sgaeyl.
God. Okay. I mean, let's get the summary out of the way and just dive into the gifts, right?
All I have is the gifts. The only notes I have are about the gifts.
Let's set the context, because I did take context for each. Sgaeyl is the isle that is dedicated to Sgaeyl. I have no idea whether I'm pronouncing either of these incorrectly, but it's a different isle in terms of their journey in more ways than one, right? One, the isle has some magic. That's like one of the first things that's noticed. But the actual first thing that's noticed is that the isle is full of people who are just welcoming them and waving. And so the way that I interpret Sgaeyl is it's a place where people live almost recklessly carefree because they just trust that luck will guide them. There's no crossbolts. They wave at everyone incoming, and they just stroll by the amphitheater hoping that they'll happen to be there when the dragon's alive.
And isn't this city at like the base of a waterfall?
Yes.
Yeah. Just like crazy.
Yeah. It's very illogical the way that they behave. And I
remember there was a description that they build much higher.
Skyward.
Yeah. They built
skyward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
And everyone else is kind of sprawling out.
Specifically said that the building styles defy architectural logic, and the city was built skyward. They also have obviously richer colors than every isle, but not as rich as the continent. there's magic there. Zortris is their capital, and they make it pretty clear that they have, quote, always revered dragonkind, and the griffins, of course. Yeah. They wear orange robes, which is not a surprise to either of us.
Yeah, because we both said, that
that
luck.
orange dragons are so. Okay, so the most important part of their visit to Zahilna that basically turns the entire group sour on this god in this isle. So just so everyone like is on the same page, right? Like Zahilna as an isle is extremely welcoming to the group. They're like, you play our game, like you pass our test, you pass our challenge, you're welcome with open arms. And after they do pass the test and challenge, they're still like, come, like we offer you beds, we offer you housing, like whatever you want, we'll ally with you, great. But because of what happens when the gifts are distributed, and we'll talk about that in a second, the group says we're actually going to sleep outside on the ground next to, spoiler, Traeger's body. So let's
spoiler alert.
This is a spoiler-full podcast.
No, I know everything. You can't. I would love if someone actually listens to this podcast without having read the books. I'm just curious as to what their experience is like.
Yeah, you're an insane person if you're out there. So the challenge in Zahilna is that you have to accept a gift from Sgaeyl and you have to thank Sgaeyl for it and not complain and just be happy that luck has doled a gift out to you and you'll take it for whatever it is. I had a note. I want to go back and reread these books and look at every single time Violet gets dizzy. Violet gets dizzy right before this game starts, and she gets dizzy before a lot of really important things. I don't have an answer for the significance of that, but the first thing that I noticed is as soon as this game was about to start, Violet almost passed out.
Yeah.
So you know that I'm not an endorser of the pregnancy theory. I still don't endorse the pregnancy theory, but I think her dizziness has to be correlated to something. Why bother mentioning it?
Well, for, what is it called? Chronic illness awareness, but yeah.
True. Yes, fair. Okay, so let's talk about the gifts. And I'll disclaim this with, and I'm sure you feel this way too, like some of these gifts, I'm just like total swag. I have no idea what they're going to mean. And I kind of think that's just going to be the case.
A rusted steel bucket?
I actually have a theory for that one. But again, these theories are going to be like crazy, right? Because we know from, let's just start with Traeger's, right? Traeger gets an arrow to the chest, and that becomes lucky because where they decide to go to burn his body happens to be the isle that the irids are on. So we know that these gifts bring luck and good fortune in some regard, regardless of what they are. But the way we would have never predicted that is how that luck would have been delivered. So I think that's going to be the case for all of them. I still think it's fun to think about it.
Yeah. I definitely didn't think too hard on these because I was like this is going to be, I'm never going to see it coming, but it's fun. Yeah.
It's fun. Mira gets wine. I think she needs to chill out.
I went in a different direction. Do we want to just do one for one? Yeah.
Yeah, let's do one for one.
So that's your theory? Mira needs to chill out?
I have like a whole holy war theory about this entire thing, and wine is obviously significant in the Last Supper and everything like that. But yeah, my theory is basically Mira needs to chill out.
So my theory was also blood of Christ, right? Like wine is the blood of Christ. Christ sacrifices himself for your sins. If you believe that, is Mira going to sacrifice herself is kind of where this is leading me. But also, yeah, maybe she just needs to chill out. I know there's other places where your mind goes to Christ as well. So
yeah. Yes, definitely. I also had just like a fun theory, so maybe we can do Drake's next. So Drake gets an orange tabby, and I had a like just for fun theory where I was like, maybe Mira gets wine and Drake gets an orange tabby, and then Mira gets drunk and they fuck.
What does that have to do with a cat?
She loves the cat. I think that Broccoli is going to be the instigator for Mira and Drake's relationship. That's my bet. I think that Drake receiving Broccoli, the orange tabby, the MVP of Onyx Storm, they immediately start talking about it. Mira has opinions on Broccoli's name. Mira, I think, holds Broccoli at some points. I think that Broccoli is going to be the thing that warms Mira and Drake's cold hearts.
Do you know my theory on Broccoli?
What's your theory on Broccoli?
And again, this is actually my craziest theory.
I know how you feel about the cats in this book, so.
Okay, so a couple of things. Especially in Fourth Wing, Violet is described as cat-like so many times.
Yeah.
Like, literally so many times. Once you look for it, it is there so much. It kind of falls off in Iron Flame and Onyx Storm a bit. Yeah. Violet is described as very cat-like. We have talked about how she might be touched by every god. In Egyptian mythology, cats are very heavily associated with, like, death. Right. I think that Broccoli could be Malek in disguise. I really have nothing for that. Like,
I just Malek.
Yeah, I don't really have a reason for it other than Violet always being described as cat-like, and then a cat shows up. I mean, the other cat also shows up. We don't need to talk about her right now, though. Like a literal feline shows up. Yeah, I mean, there's always kind of underworld tones to cats in mythology. So I don't know if Broccoli is necessarily literally Malek or if Broccoli leads them to Malek. Like, I don't think it's a Peter Pettigrew situation necessarily, but
these all are going to be like domino effect type gifts.
Right. Yeah. My money is on Broccoli somehow getting them to Malek. And I'm really excited to see if I'm right. I don't think I am.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love it.
That's probably my craziest theory on these gifts.
Okay. Marin gets 2 orange tunics. Where my mind went here is Marin has 2 younger brothers that are saved from her hometown when her parents are killed by our favorite Venin, Theophany. And I think maybe they'll be citizens of Sgaeyl one day, or maybe it'll be a way for them to basically get away from the treachery that's going to become the continent in the next 2 books.
Interesting. I had a slightly different... It's interesting. My theories are like, some of them are like, have already happened. Like some of them is like, oh, this is symbolism for what happened. And some of them is like, okay, this could be what will happen. So orange flags are used when they're in Orisha on the battle map to show new places where the Venin are attacking, right? Mm-hmm. So there's 2 cities, Resin and Breivik, that are like not part of the pattern. And those are mapped with orange flags. So my mind also went to the twin brothers. But in my mind, I'm like, is this a flag? Are the Venin coming for Marin's brothers? In a way, the Venin have actually already come for Marin's brothers.
Yeah.
But is that going to happen? Again, is this going to be important?
Well, it kind of did, right? Because they went to Orisha.
Yeah.
Dane gets a slap. So let's just talk about this one briefly. What I thought was interesting is Xaden says he's worried about the implications of that hit. So context, right? Dane, in the beginning of Fourth Wing, is presented as needing to touch people's faces to read their memories. His gift from Sgaeyl is a slap. We all think it's kind of funny. Xaden says he's worried about the implications of that hit. And so you might be thinking, could he have possibly learned anything from that slap? And I think where you immediately go is, well, there's magic on Zahilna, but not enough to wield. But we also have been told things that make us think maybe there's more to Dane's magic than meets the eye. Like, what's going on with Dane? We know nothing about his mother. We think his father might be a Venin, but we don't really know. And we learn from Sloane that he has an inordinate amount of power. Like, what's going on with Dane? I think there's definitely a possibility that he could have magic or abilities that we're not thinking about and could have learned something from that slap. Basically, what I'm getting at is there's been enough evidence that I wouldn't rule out that he was able to wield and see something through that slap.
Right. So we know that Eric was plotting so that Dane comes. Right. Yeah. That Dane did not actually have to come, but Eric said, no, you have to come. It seems to be pointing towards this slap. There is also that quote in Iron Flame that I believe I texted you with like 20 exclamation points when I found it. So the scenario is Violet is getting tortured in the dungeon and Varish brings in Dane and Dane says like, why wouldn't you just tell me the truth? Why couldn't you just tell me the truth? Violet says, I think you've been lied to for so long that you won't recognize the truth even when it hits you in the face. And then Dane gets hit in the face, right? Yeah. So I don't know what he saw, but I'm 100% convinced that he finds something out with this slap. I think he probably doesn't understand it, which is why we don't know what it is. Yeah.
You think it's something that he would have brought up though? Like maybe it was so jarring that he had the foresight to not say anything about it.
Maybe he just didn't bring it up to Violet. Like maybe he told Xaden or maybe he told Eric.
Yeah, true. I do think Dane and Xaden have, one, it seems like they've developed some sort of relationship in this.
Camaraderie.
And two, we see like more, parallels is the wrong word, but when Xaden is talking about how Sgaeyl like runs the show and he's just along for the ride, Dane is like, yeah, same.
I mean, Dane is being Xaden to Sloane. Like, Dane is absolutely taking
down to the brother and the father
playbook. Yeah. Like, just applying it to Sloane. Yeah. Like, our man has learned some things.
He's learned some things. Yeah. Yeah. I also just thought of something. Okay. This is when they're in Unnbriel and basically it is revealed that Eric is completely fluent in Unbrish after Dane is like struggling through conversation. Eric says, close but no. He asks if Xaden is our champion or a prince. Don't be embarrassed, Atos. The words sound similar enough. And then he steps forward and replies to the commander in flawless Unbrish. Everyone's shocked. And then it said, whatever he says gives the commander and the priestess pause before she replies, her gaze darting to me again. Dane says, are you serious? Blah, blah, blah. Eric says, you never asked. And then Eric says, I told them who I am and that I'd be the one fighting.
Yeah, he's
Why
definitely
would they
lying.
look at Violet?
Definitely lying. 100%.
He's lying. I think he's lying. I think we know we are given all of the clues that Eric is scheming throughout this, but I think the fact that we're given pretty close to hard evidence that he's not saying what he's saying that he's saying to these people, I think there's totally potential for Dane having important significance on this trip that is not just this battle. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. The next gift, Garrick gets a rusted steel bucket. So, like, there's not a lot to go off of here. However, where I went is that Garrick is a distance wielder, which we now know. He needs to carry others and things long distances. And so, is he given some sort of vessel that needs to carry something important? I don't know.
Yeah, I had a similarly, like, I don't know thing, but mine was kind of like the bucket is Garrick at the end of Onyx Storm, because like he's very strong and powerful like steel, but he's rusty and tired and he doesn't really have the strength to go on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean,
who knows, right? He's a distance wielder. He carries people. He's strong. Agree. Eric gets a fractured hand mirror. So there's some depth we can get into here, right? So Eric is actually Prince Cam. He is second in line to the Navarian throne, but he is absolutely adamant that Halden is going to be king. Halden's going to rule, and it's not for him, and he doesn't want it, and that he's going to fight and probably die in this war. Where I went with this is Eric has not taken enough time to look in the mirror, understand how important he is, and that he can and should rule in some regard, whether it's Navarre or something else. Like, he's underestimating his own significance in this entire battle. I also think that there's an element of a mirror that allows you to see who's behind your back, but I don't really have anything with Eric that makes me think that somebody is trying to play with him at this point, because he's been pretty good about keeping his abilities covert.
Yeah, I was thinking, I had two thoughts with the fracture. I had three thoughts with the fractured hand mirror. So one, broken mirror is bad luck, right? Am I making that up? No, that's a fact.
When you
Broken
break
mirrors are bad
with
luck.
like 7 years of bad luck or something.
Right.
Yeah.
We're on the Isle of Sgaeyl, bad luck. So this is not good for our favorite princeling. The second one, when Dane and Xaden and Violet get selected for their fights, right? They get cut.
Yeah.
And that's how like Dune
Yeah.
selects them.
Oh yeah, and Eric also gets cut by the
Eric is getting cut now. Is that like Sgaeyl kind of selecting him, saying like, I have trials for you?
Yeah, interesting.
So that was kind of my thought there. And then obviously, because I'm a Harry Potter kid, they don't do this in the movies, but they kind of do in the movies, but the series Black Mirror, right? Where you can talk to people through mirrors. Is that a thing that exists in this world? How is the mirror fractured? Are all of the pieces in place? Is there a fragment that's missing? Does someone have that fragment? Can you talk to that person through that fragment? Those were kind of my basic thoughts around the mirror. I think it's interesting that all of these have like a symbolic thing that we can make, but then there's obviously going to be a practical application too. Like, I don't know.
Xaden gets a very specifically described gift, an empty glass box the size of his foot with pewter hinges and edges. Where I don't know. I feel like I could do a better job with this one, but where I went is that Xaden needs someone or something to hold his soul while he's out doing what is necessary without it. I also think that the fact that it is glass is significant for Xaden because he is the most opaque character out there by design. And so he has kept his like being, his soul, his mentality, his secrets walled by shadows, concealed, and he receives a box that is completely transparent. And so anything that you put in it, even if they can't access it, can be seen by everybody. I don't know what to make of the fact that it's the size of his foot. I thought maybe it's the same size as a dagger, I don't
I
know.
mean, he puts the blade of Orisha in it, which
And
he
maybe he
calls
could
a
ward it
box
because
of
it's a box?
nothingness. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you certainly could ward it, right? And then we know that the venin are being kept in that chest, right?
Yeah. The rice bed chest or
Right.
Ribestad?
Ribestad, I think.
Ribestad.
I wrote under this one, truly no idea. I have truly no idea. I do think it's interesting that he calls it a box of nothingness, which
Yeah.
as a girl with a science background, the idea of it truly being a box of nothingness, like if that is actually just a vacuum with nothing in it is crazy, but that's
Yeah.
obviously not what it is.
Yeah. And there's a blade in it.
Yeah, I like the idea. I think something's going to be held in this box. Is it going to be Zayden's soul? I don't know.
Can your soul even be extracted into a thing? I also think it could be interesting to think about the fact that if, like, whatever you put in it is protected by Zynal in some way. Like, he's keeping
Yeah.
the gift from Zynal as good luck, and then luck protects whatever he puts in it. And so maybe it's not. Maybe we have no way of knowing what goes into it, but maybe whatever goes into it is protected in some regard. Okay, Violet gets a broken compass. There's so many theories on the internet that this broken compass leads Violet to Zayden. We know that the compass does not point north. We don't know what it points to. I think it points to something. I don't think that the something is Zayden.
I agree. I don't think it's Zayden.
Yeah.
But I don't think she
it's
needs a
meaningless.
compass to find Zayden.
Yeah, right. But I do think it points her to something. And we hear a lot about, I don't have a great one for this. I feel like anything that
The
I
interesting
say,
one for this, it kind of just came to me
tell
as
me.
we were talking.
Yeah.
When she is given the compass, the guy says to her, use it wisely. And we have just left Hedotis, which we both agree was sketchy as fuck. Is that not, or we've left Hedotis. Was that not really Hedotis? Like, does this compass point to what is actually Hedotis, and that's how she actually finds Hedotis? And that's why he said use it wisely. Like, does it have something to do with Hedotis and the god of wisdom?
Yeah. Well, one of my throwaway, like I tossed it, precog theories was that Devarelli's actually Hedotis because they pray to no one.
I love that. But she already knows how to get to Devarelli.
Correct. So that doesn't work with this, but I think it's fun. Yeah, but that could be interesting. Use it wisely. Yeah, it has to tie back to Hedotis in some way, whether it's Hedotis or real Hedotis. Or...
It definitely doesn't have to, but he does say use it wisely,
I mean,
and we
use it
just left
wisely
the
is
god
pretty-
of wisdom. Yeah.
Pretty on the nose.
Yeah. I hate the idea of this being how she finds Zayden.
I don't
got
think it is.
so many other ways for
Yeah.
her to find Zayden.
No,
Like,
yeah. And so, like, I mean, things that Violet needs to find, right? Like a cure.
a cure, a weapon, still the irids, although I guess Aunt Darna found them.
Yeah. But the irids,
Zayden.
the irids grounds, right? Like where the irids habitate could be interesting.
Yeah, but I'm assuming Aunt Darna knows where that is now.
Yeah, true. Her father, Malek.
This is gonna get into my Precog Corner theory, so let's
Okay, we'll stay away from it. Okay. All right. Riddick gets a kiss on each cheek. You already know because I texted you immediately after I knew that you had read this part. Actually, for the listeners, this is a funny story. So when we first finished Onyx Storm, I threw a book party and we started a spreadsheet of this stuff, which we should have known then that this was going to happen, but I didn't really. Anyways, we made the spreadsheet. One of the tabs was all of Zynal's gifts. And in the Riddick's gift being a kiss on each cheek row, I wrote, okay, Judas. So I think that this is a symbol. I mean, a kiss per cheek is a known biblical symbol of Judas. And we know that Judas betrayed Jesus. So there's two ways, in my opinion, that you can look at this. One is very good for Riddick and one is very bad. One is if you just look at the implication that Judas is related to this, then you could be potentially set up for a Riddick betrayal of some type, which would be devastating. We love Riddick. He is like the sole defender of Violet. He is Team Violet all the way before Zayden, which not a lot of people are like that, right? So that's one. But the other option is that Judas's method of betrayal is kissing Jesus on each cheek. And so if you take this literally, this could mean that Luck is going to betray Riddick.
I
and
like
Riddick
that
is the
so
one who's
much more.
betrayed.
Because Riddick says his preferred god is Zynal. Like he has a line when they're in the town.
Yeah. And we know that Riddick got really lucky in the kitchen in Hedotis when He almost got stabbed, and he didn't get stabbed, luckily. His jacket got stabbed. And so Riddick lives by luck. Like, he definitely has that vibe. Does his luck run out? I think that's what this could mean.
No. I have no notes on this one because I think you're right. I just loved your theory, so I don't have any notes.
You just didn't even bother writing it down.
No, I was like, Roddy's got this one.
Okay, well then I'll let you get this one. Kat is given a gold necklace with a dangling ruby.
The size of Violet's thumb. Yeah. So 2 things. Violet's wedding ring is also the size of her thumb. So they're the exact same size. Yeah. I already said my theory on this one. I think Kat's going to turn Venin. I don't know that means she's turning bad Venin, or maybe she turns Venin to go hang out with Xaden.
Yeah.
But the red regalia thing, the rubies seem to be a sign of Venin.
Yeah. Interesting. I had written, rubies tend to be in most cultures a stone of kings and royals. And so I thought it could be foreshadowing of
the crown of Tyrrendor
rising to a crown of something, right? I don't know. I personally would be pretty upset if Kat ended up Queen of Tyrrendor given everything else that's currently gone on. But maybe, like, look, if it's in Violet's wishes, then I'm all for it. But yeah, I think there could also, like, that meaning could be twofold, right? Like, she could be headed towards Veninism. She also could be headed towards a crown.
It's hard for me to see how Kat becomes Venin when she's literally spent her whole life like fighting them, but and we've kind of gotten past the Kat is a crazy bitch.
Who spent his whole life fighting Venin?
Xaden. Yeah, I know. I don't know.
And then finally, Traeger gets an arrow to the heart. This is the only one where I feel like we have confirmed
we know
behind it, right? Like, the squad found the irids because they flew to a nearby isle to bury him. I also like to believe in my own head, this is an example of headcanon, everyone, that Traeger's arrow to the heart was allusion to being shot by Cupid.
Yeah. No, it is, right? Because he's only on the mission because Kat wanted him to come.
Kat asked him to. God, girl can't catch a break. I had a comment actually on a TikTok this week that was like, I don't like the idea of Kat being with Auric or something. Am I the only person developing a soft spot for Kat? I have a soft spot for her.
I think she's been through a lot. Yeah, I mean, sure.
Girl deserves a break.
Yeah, not if she turns Venin, but yeah. No, I definitely don't hate Kat anymore. She's definitely like on the good side of the good guys. Yeah, I think the quest squad really softened her character.
Yeah.
I don't like her with Eric, though.
Yeah, no. I don't either. Well,
who would I like with Eric? Sadly, Violet.
Just Violet? Yeah, correct. That's right.
Tough.
My favorite Kat moment of the books so far is when they're sitting at the table in Hedotis and she just goes like, I said yes, he said no.
Yeah.
It's awkward.
Right. It's a good one.
They're them now.
And the fact that she doesn't lose her shit when Traeger dies, I think is also very endearing. Like, she could have just completely lost her mind, and she doesn't.
Yeah.
And she blames herself. She doesn't blame Violet, right? Yeah. Not that I want girls to be going around blaming themselves for things, but it's nice that she doesn't blame Violet.
Natural line to draw. I also think that sets Kat up for some romances. Like, clearly Traeger wasn't it.
I know. I hope she gets her happy ending. I hope Eric gets his happy ending too, but I don't know that I want them to be together.
Yeah, we haven't had enough character development on either side for me to really have a strong opinion on that so far. Okay, that's kind of what I had for Xynel. He is going to come into play throughout the rest of the books, and I think they're going to tie back, or I hope they're going to tie back to these gifts, and if they don't overtly, I will go hunting for how they tie back. Like, at the end of the series, when all 5 books are out, I'm coming back to this list.
No, I very much think it's going to be like it was with Traeger, where like on first read, you don't realize it. And then you go back and you're like,
yeah. And in conclusion, I'm worried about Riddick.
I'm worried about Riddick. I'm worried about Kat. I'm worried about Hedion. Is he okay?
Don't know. I'm worried about broccoli, but that's not new.
Yeah.
All right. Tell us about Loial.
All right. I don't have that much about Loial other than what we've already talked about. So we talked about that quote before where most people get married in Loial's temple, but Xaden and Violet got married at Dune's temple. I think that's important. I don't think it necessarily will bring up a question of like legitimacy of their marriage. I have to get this off my chest because it's bugging the shit out of me. Have you seen the theories going around social media this week that Bodhi married Violet at the end of the books? Like, Xaden set it up so that Bodhi and Violet got married.
You keep saying things on this podcast that deeply upset me.
There's no way that is what happened here. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
But also, it's literally, they get a marriage certificate.
I know. I know. Literally, like
No.
Brennan says, it is a certificate of your marriage to Xaden. Like, it literally spells it out at the end of Onyx Storm. Yeah.
Like, on what grounds are they saying this?
I don't know, because it upset me so much I didn't watch it. But like, basically, like, that's how he's
Dumb.
protecting her. And I'm like, no, he's protecting her because now she's the Duchess either way. Whatever.
No. Yeah.
No.
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 The answer's no.
Anyway. Yes.
Like,
So the
do
quote,
I think that he could serve as some, like, standing in Xaden's stead figure to her? Sure. But do I think they got legally married? No.
all right. So the quote about people getting married in Loial's temple is, doubt Loial would let me in, I mutter. Can't remember the last time I stepped foot in her temple. I'd stopped praying to her years ago, along with Hedian. Violet does not pray to Hedian. Out of pure spite. Love and wisdom hadn't exactly shown up when I needed them to. So people typically get married at Loial's temple. They got married at Dune's temple. And then we've talked about this quote before, but while most deities allow temple attendants to choose their timeline of service, only two require a lifetime of dedication, Dune and Loial, for both war and love, change souls irrevocably. So just this idea again that Xaden's soul is changed. And I think the ending of Onyx Storm absolutely supports that, right? Like, love is what he holds on to at the end. I don't have anything else for Loial, but I think we go to Loial's Island absolutely in book 4.
I know that they got married in the Temple of Dune. It would be fun if Xaden was touched by Loial. That would be fun.
Yeah, that's what I thought originally. Also, clearly he also has some Dune in him, right?
He's described as Dune Huns, and he's described as Malek once and Amari once, I think, but never Loial. In fact, he calls Violet love the entire last book, the entire third book. So yeah, not much on Loial.
Not much yet. More to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, not much yet. Yeah. Okay, Amari. So we know that the continent, everywhere except the continent, is called Amoralis. It is the territory of Amari. But importantly, as we already talked about, right, on Amoralis, they worship all gods.
Everyone.
They just hold Amari above all others. And the exact quote is, every other isle worships one member of the pantheon. And though we celebrate all, we hold one above all others, Amari. And so we already talked about how I think the continent could have potential favor with the gods that the isles do not, because the isles shun other gods and favor one, which we learned from the epigraph in chapter 30 is a no-no. But Amoralis is interesting, right? Because unlike all of the isles and other territories, we have this like amalgamation of different gods and cultures. And in Hedotis, Violet's eyes are described as being an amalgamation of different colors. And so I think this just furthers Violet is aligned with Amari and potentially touched by all of the gods, because we've heard a lot about eye colors being tied to gods.
Right, and the colors of her eyes are blue, green, and amber, right? And we have the blue on Dune, and we have the green on Hedian, and I mean amber we don't have yet. Maybe it's Loial.
Yeah, maybe it's Loial. Maybe it's Venom.
Maybe it's Venom. Maybe it's Maybelline.
Amari is the primary god on the continent, and her temples are the largest, but we also know that Malek and Dune are the next largest temples, even though they're far smaller than Amari's. Obviously, the colors on the continent are much richer than anywhere else, and we also know that Violet basically spent any temple time that she did spend in Amari's temple, and uses Amari liberally in everyday language. We hear thank Amari, buy Amari, like everything, all the time. Far more, I would say the second most common one is probably Malek for Violet, but we hear Amari a lot. And then the only other note that I had, Orisha's most noted landmark outside of their library is the Temple of Amari. And so I wonder whether Tyrrendor, so we're like this whole center of gravity of the continent has been made to be Bisgaeth. But I think before Bisgaeth existed, Tyrrendor could have been the pinnacle of Amari's territory, because their temple is a huge landmark and a huge deal to them. So maybe her territory centered in Tyrrendor. Yeah. Which would be interesting, because Tyrrendor is so far from what's now the center of Navarre that it's outside of their wards.
Yeah. I did not have any notes on Amari, really. Like,
it's not very interesting yet.
I
think she will be.
I think she will be too. Yeah, she looks like Rhiannon. She apparently is usually accompanied by cherubs. That's what I had, but I didn't really have anything else.
Yep. Okay. Tell me about Malek.
All right. So I don't have any like super new insights into Malek, but I do feel like I had an epiphany when I was reading this. So I always thought of Malek as kind of like a Hades character, like watching over all the souls of the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's actually how it works. I think Malek is actually more of a judge and can reject you. So what they're always saying is like, may their souls be commended to Malek, right? Which means like, I am recommending basically your soul to Malek. I'm saying you're of good character. I'm saying you're of high moral fiber, right?
Yep.
Sloane, when she shows up at Besgaiath at Iron Flame and absolutely hates Violet, she says, go straight to hell, she whispers, and I really mean that. I hope that no one commends your soul to Malek. I hope he rejects it. Liam was worth a dozen of your kind, and I hope you spend eternity paying for what you cost me, what you cost all of us. So souls can be rejected, right? And there is a concept of hell, which I think is interesting. It's not just like an underworld where everyone goes. It's like it's more like Malek is like St. Peter at the gates of heaven.
Yeah.
Right.
He's the guardian of heaven. Like he's where you want to get to.
Yeah. Which was
yeah.
I was very much thinking Hades from the Hercules movie, and it's really more like, no, he's actually kind of an angel, which I think is interesting. So we've talked about this quote before, but I think it's interesting to look at this from a Malek perspective. And it's the quote about resurrecting, right? So after all, bonding makes you a rider, but resurrecting someone from the dead, now that makes you a god. I somehow don't think that Malek takes kindly to a mortal treading on his territory. Your quote about the power of the gods being real led me to think, okay, this is literal. This is literal, that Malek can resurrect people. People can come back from the dead. Does that leave the door open for Asher? Does it leave the door open for Fen? Does that leave the door open for Lilith or anyone else to actually come back? And did this already happen with Liam, in a sense, right? So did Malek literally send Liam to help Violet when she needed help? So the line is, Violet says to Liam, you're not really here. You're a hallucination from pain and dehydration, a mirage. Maybe, Liam says, or maybe Malek sent me as a kindness. Malek doesn't do kindness, nor does he allow souls to wander about. I'm not wandering, Violet. I'm exactly where I need to be. Right. So if Malek sent Liam,
which I choose to believe he did, by the way.
Right. Well, then Malek has a vested interest in Violet staying alive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what Liam says is, hold the line, Vi. Liam rests his hand against my side, and gods, it feels so great. Talking would lead to the deaths of every living thing on this continent. Right. So that's why Malek sends Liam to prevent death, which I kind of thought is interesting. Right. Because if you think about Hades, he wants everyone to die, but it sounds like Malek does not want that. Maybe he doesn't want to do all that work. Maybe that's too much judging. But I think I always thought of Malek as a kind of nefarious creature. That's kind of how they talk about him. But when you really kind of look at it, and if you listen to what Liam says, he seems to be much more on the side of good, on the side of the angels, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And this is where people think she's touched by Malek too, right? Because Malek has a vested interest in her staying alive and her not revealing the secrets of the Tirish revolution.
It's not weird that we didn't view Malek in that way, because Violet, when she personifies him, makes him seem that way, right? Like she says, I can't help but wonder if somewhere on some plane of existence, Malek sits on his throne, angry that I stole a soul from his grasp.
Right. Like, they make him sound like the devil.
Yeah, they make him sound like he wants people dead. But as far as us understanding how his process works, he very much seems like he's welcoming people who are invited into his realm. It's kind of typical of a god of death, right? To be viewed in both lights.
Did you have anything else about Malek?
Yes. I did. I mean, territory-wise, it's interesting that he has no territory, right? Like, he has a Bay of Malek, but nothing known. Other than that, he also requires the burning of belongings, which just given dragonkind is interesting to me. It's interesting that it's belongings and not you.
Yeah, it's so weird, right?
And I thought for a while that it was you. And I was like, okay. But then dragonfire is used for execution, which makes it seem like they're out of Malek's grasp in some regard. They're not commending their souls to Malek. They're burning them.
Yeah. But the flyers, they burn, right? Kat is insistent that they burn Traeger's body.
Yeah. Because the griffins are burned. They prefer to be burned, and Traeger would want to be with his griffin. Also, Xaden is so often compared to Dune, but there's a specific moment in Unnbriel where the High Priestess hints at him being related to another god that's not Dune. And so this could be, we just talked about Loial, right? Like, it could totally be Loial. Queen Marley says, or perhaps you now favor another god. She glances up at Tairn, ignoring my outburst, and then her eyes slide to Xaden. And Violet says, I choose him. Whether she's talking about Xaden or Tairn, my answer is the same. This would make sense if Xaden were in some way touched by Malek or touched by Loial. What confuses me more, I don't have an answer for it, is that Xaden and Tairn are aligned somehow. Like, Violet is like, my answer is the same regardless of whether she's talking about Xaden or Tairn. Who is the god that links both Xaden or Tairn? Xaden
Well,
and Tairn.
And there's the one that curries her favor, which I think we've quite convincingly proved is Malek.
Yeah, let's just rehash that quickly. I firmly believe that Malek is the other who curries her favor. Onyx Storm, Chapter 64. A gift from one servant of Dune to another. I must warn you, only those touched by the gods should wield their wrath. I will pray to her, capital H, that she, lowercase s, need not use it to avoid reacquainting herself, lowercase h, with the other who curries her favor. Her path is still not set. From High Priestess Deserve to His Royal Highness Eric Greycastle. So, reacquaintance possibilities, right? Liam. Malek sent me as a kindness. That's option one. We also know that Violet used to talk with Malek quite a bit after her father died.
After Asher dies.
She visited his temple and maybe yelled at him more than worshipped him. I find it really hard to believe that Malek is not, in this particular passage, the other who curries her favor. She is trying to avoid reacquainting herself
with death. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's hoping that she won't have to use the dagger to avoid that. And so
Which is exactly what she has to do.
Avoid Theophany killing her. I have one kind of crazy theory. I don't think you're going to like it about Malek. So a mark of dedication to Dune includes a physical trait, silver hair, some form of power, we think, not clear what, and a pull to temple, like a pull towards the subject of dedication. Are the Venin dedicated to Malek? It manifests in a physical trait, they get power, and then they're pulled towards that power source forever, and their soul dies. Like you said in a former episode,
He's
Malek
the
is
collector of souls.
Like, are the Venin Malek's army? Like a misguided army, but we've seen, right, that dedicated humans to gods do not always do the right thing. But if the Venin are Malek's army, is this a holy war? I have a few times in which known Venin are described as meeting Malek, right? In Iron Flame, after Jack Barlow comes back, Rhiannon says, it's like he met Malek and decided to come back a decent guy when he's tutoring first years on the mat. And Xaden says, you keep your focus on the enemy and your life to Violet. He kisses me hard and quick. Even Malek himself couldn't keep me from you. Is he already with Malek in some way? Like, are Venin dedicated to Malek? The thing that doesn't work is that would mean that Malek requires a lifetime of dedication, unless there's a cure.
Maybe. I think it sets up a totally different thing than I thought we were getting set up for.
It's a hard sell. I think it's a hard sell.
I mean, I definitely thought we were getting set up for all the gods helping to defeat the Venin.
Yeah. And it also makes Malek into this character that we don't want him to be, right? So, I don't know.
But in your defense, right? Like, if the Venin are drawing from the ground, and if Malek rules the underworld, then that would be where his magic is, right? It would be in the ground.
I think the only way that it works in a way that I don't absolutely hate, to be honest with you, is if there's morally good and morally bad Venin, and we're just only being presented with the ones who are morally bad. We talked about this in the Venin episode, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, is there a world in which a bunch of people from Tirandor who were about to be marked for death, could they have turned knowing that they were going to be put to death by dragonfire?
Yeah.
Knowing that's the only way that they could avoid death by dragonfire, and then started working from the inside. I'm hoping that in the next book we meet temple attendants of Malek and see that there's another form of dedication. There's no way that this could be true. I don't really want it to be true.
All right. Was that your precog, or do you still have a precog?
I have a precog, but it's more crazy. I make my precogs with no basis.
I love it.
Okay, Precog Corner. Go.
All right. We know that when they are in Unnbriel, Maris asks for 12 dragon eggs. I know that a lot of people think that the dragon eggs have been taken to Unnbriel to fulfill this request. However, as we have pointed out, there are only 6 dragon eggs, and Maris has asked for 12.
6 dragon eggs missing from the Vale.
There are 6 dragon eggs missing from the Vale. Maris has asked for 12. You have thoroughly convinced me that the power of the gods is a real thing, and that perhaps dragons have stolen the power of the gods and are not supposed to have the magic that they do have, and that the dragons and the gods are fighting. Mm-hmm. The dragons have fallen out of favor with the gods. They have taken 6 eggs. There are 6 gods. And we know, we talked about this last week, that whatever Sgaeyl is doing, she is doing for the good of dragonkind. And we have talked about how dragon eggs have the ability to re-imbue magic into wherever dragons hatch, the magic changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are they taking the eggs to the gods? 1 egg to each god to give them back their magic as like a peace offering. Like, hey, sorry, we pissed you off. We know. You need to be part of this fight. Here is a dragon egg. We come in peace.
To each isle?
Not to each isle. Not to each isle. To
temple.
the gods. To each god.
Where?
I don't know. I don't know.
Huh.
But I do think, like, do you believe that the gods are real? That we will at some point meet a physical manifestation of each of these gods?
Definitely Malek.
So I think, right, Malek has a throne somewhere, right? I don't think they're taking the eggs to the Isles, but I don't think they're going to Unnbriel because it's not 12 eggs, it's 6 eggs. There's 6 gods.
And then that basically like breaks, which I'm all for. Like, I don't need this theory to be true, but it breaks the theory of a dragon's color is tied to a god, or a dragon's den is tied to a god, because we wouldn't know what the colors of these dragons are. It's just like, here's a dragon.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Wow.
Other things, so I have the quotes that we've talked about before. So Tairn, when they leave the continent, right, and he starts to feel all weak, he says, we draw on magic for strength. I hadn't realized how dependent we'd become, right? So that to me means Tairn is like, shit, we really need another form of strength here. We've made a mistake. We have become overly reliant on this magic. We need, and we have become unreliant on the gods. We have not been paying homage. We have not been worshiping enough, basically. We need to go back to the gods. So I think Tairn realizes that the magic is going to betray them. If we are going on the theory that the dragons are wielding from the ground, and that is a finite amount of power, if they bring the eggs back to the gods, does that mean they can wield from the sky again, potentially? And there is no cap on their power anymore. And when they're on Unnbriel, Maris says, because she's asking for the 12 dragon eggs, right? She says, from what I know of them, they're rather dedicated to protecting their own, and perhaps a dozen eggs aren't such a bad price for saving the rest of them, right? So she throws the word dedicated in there, which we know is a sign for the gods.
Save the rest of them.
Save the rest of them, right? So it's not a dozen eggs, but it is 6 eggs. And maybe they have decided that's not such a bad price to pay. And it's not giving the eggs to humans, right? It's giving the eggs to gods.
Yeah. Huh.
That's my current working theory.
I mean, it makes more sense, right? Like, it feels off that we would just deliver half of Unnbriel's request and just assume that that's going to be good.
I don't think it's Unnbriel. It makes no sense for it to be Unnbriel. Yeah. Why would you only take 6 eggs? If you could take 6 eggs, you could take 12 eggs.
Yeah. I do feel like this series ends with the power of the gods being returned to them. So that would work into it. But why would that happen in book 4? I like it. I'm into it.
Thank you.
I need to think about that. I feel like I need like a digestion period for all of our episodes. Okay. Okay. My Precog Corner theory is far less realistic, as per usual. I thought about this when you were talking about Tairn having been to Unnbriel before, knowing things he shouldn't know, and just being like weird overall, right? And we were hypothesizing about the dragons lying about a bunch of stuff. We know that they're lying about their names in some capacity because they're bonding relatives of other riders and not being detected. And this specific scene occurred when they were flying to the Isles, which is why it's in the Isles episode. But I thought I'd bring it here because we already did the dragon episodes. So Tairn's whole bit is reciting his line, right? Like he loves to. It's his favorite thing. Violet's like, I know it by heart, whatever. And they're flying to Deverelli, and he's going through like the lore of his breed. And she says, I listen as Tairn recites the lore of his breed from the first of his line up to Thoreau, the first black dragon to ever successfully bond back during the Great War, then stops. Apparently the story is no longer worth telling once humans are involved. And I scoured every single book, and the only other quote that I could find about Tairn's lineage is, I am still Tairnianach, son of Mertquidium and Eoclinful, descended from the cunning Dubmadin line. Yeah. I know that I butchered that Gaelic pronunciation, but that's the only other thing that we have about Tairn. What if he's not lying? He's actually never said his age, right? We're skeptical about Tairn's age, right? The only thing that we've ever heard about his age is from a professor that's like,
Kaori, who's wrong about 100. Everything. Yeah.
What if we just grossly misinterpreted lifespans of dragons, and Tairn is not lying, and Tairn is Thoreau.
Yeah, I think that's totally.
Do you think that's feasible?
I think it's
And
likely.
if that's the case, he bonded a member of the original six.
Yeah. But we don't know which one, right?
I'm not sold on this, but is Theophany a realistic candidate? If Theophany
For being
was,
Lyra.
which she would have been Lyra, I think. She's
Maybe.
dead now. So, like, is that realistic? I don't know. But it would explain a lot about Theophany being able to track Violet and seemingly knowing everywhere she was if she still had a bond to Tairn that he was just actively blocking as much as he could. Or not. Like, I don't know.
I think it's Pancheck, right? Pancheck was feeding Theophany information.
We are fed that explanation. Yes, that's true. I don't even know how explicitly we're fed it, actually. We just find out that he's betrayed them all at the end.
I definitely think it's possible that Tairn has been around. The line that always sticks out with me with Tairn is, I chose you not as my
next, but as my last.
As my next, but as my last.
Yeah.
Right? Is supposed to be able to live. If we think dragon lifespans are 200 years, Violet's not living for 100 years, right? So, like, what did he mean by that?
There's a time where someone, I think it's maybe Sawyer or Riddick, I confused them in the earlier books, asked, can Tairn take Kodag? And a bunch of people respond, and Tairn is silent.
I have no memory of this, but that doesn't mean I don't believe you.
I'll either edit it out or find it.
Because Kodag is the elder.
There's another question, which is like, is Kodag Thoreau? I don't know. But it's interesting, right, that Tairn recites everything and then just stops at Thoreau with no further explanation. I don't know. It's Precog Corner for a reason.
I had a thought as you were talking, and this also will kind of tie into our mailbag episode next week. But now that the irids are in play, and now that I kind of believe you that the irids are probably hiding out on the continent, any bond is up to be broken. Any bond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Theophany, Naolin. I think any bond is fair game for not being there anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. We have been talking for almost 3 hours.
Yeah. You guys will experience a shorter episode thanks to our editing skills, but we're at 2 hours and 44 minutes, so we're gonna call it.
Yeah, I don't have anything fun I'm even reading right now, so.
Yeah, I don't remember whether I said this on the last episode, but this weekend I will pick back up the next book in Crescent City, but I was reading at an unhealthy pace and was not able to control myself, so I'm not reading anything right now. I did watch The Substance last night. Not for me.
I think I'm gonna start Akatar this week.
Yeah.
So that we can pod about it. I am 200 pages in. I'm not going to name this book because people love this book. I am 200 pages into an 800-page fantasy novel, and I kind of hate it. And I'm like, do I keep going? Is it going to get better? I've heard it's a slow burn, and it's got 4 different like POV. It's not written in first person, it's written in third person, but there's 4 different characters we're following. And it's like whenever any momentum starts to pick up on one, we switch to something else. And there's literally like 10 different kingdoms I already have to keep track of. And I'm just like, this is just way too much for the beginning of a book. Like I need to understand one place first before you throw all these other different places at me.
Yeah. It's tough to read. And Sarah J. Maas is guilty of this as well, to a lesser degree, in my opinion. It's tough to read books where they dedicate all the upfront time to world building. I'm like, I need something.
Right. I just don't care about like any of these characters right now. And I'm already a quarter of the way through the book.
Right.
I'm like,
annoying.
Is this worth my time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But it comes highly, two of my very good friends have recommended it. So I'm like, okay.
Kind of at some point feel like I should read some of Sanderson's works. I think that might be like my post-romantasy.
I don't know what that is.
He wrote, I think, The Stormlight. He definitely wrote a series called Mistborn. He writes like really dense, heavy fantasy. That's more like
that's what this is.
Tolkien-esque.
Yeah. That's exactly what this is. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Also, I told you this, but I finally saw the Keira Knightley version of Pride and Prejudice, and I absolutely loved it. What a delightful movie. Oh my God.
Welcome to the rest of the world who's seen that movie. She's lovely.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah. Nice. Okay.
All right.
Well, thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks for listening.
We are on basically every podcasting platform you could imagine, but we are Dragons in the Details pod on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and others. Feel free to DM, comment. We're doing a mailbag episode. It's probably going to be the first of multiple, and so we love to hear from you. We love to hear when you disagree with us. We urge you to come with evidence of why you disagree with us so that we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And email us too. dragonsandthedetailspod@gmail.com.
Has anyone even ever done that?
No one's ever emailed us. I'm waiting for the first one. Come on, guys.
We have an email. It's dragonsandthedetailspod@gmail.com. If you are our first email, we'll shout you out. There you
Absolutely.
go. Incentive.
You don't even have to say anything. You could just say hi. It won't give you a shout out.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.